Welcome everyone to the very first Sacramento Public Library's Lunchtime Publisher Book Buzz series. My name is Brendel Wells and I am the adult materials selector for the Sacramento Public Library, and I really am excited to have you here. If you guys are looking to stuff your tote bag or fill up that TBR shelf this summer, trust me, you've come to the right place. And I need to tell you before we get underway that summer reading is officially underway at the library, and we invite you to visit our website at saclibrary.org and sign up for our summer reading program. It's easy, and programs like this count towards your goal along with the books that you read. Adult finishers will receive a coupon for one free book at the book den and a choice of tote bag or chip clip. I mean, something to carry your books and then to keep your snacks fresh. Cool. But of course, the best reward of all is the pleasure of reading a good book. Just a few housekeeping details to relate before we get started. Please note that this presentation is being recorded, and all participants have both their camera and microphones turned off for this event so that we may better focus on the main presentation. The chat is open, as we've already discovered, and if you have questions for our presenter or for me, that's the place to ask. If you have technical difficulties, please message me directly, and I'll do my best to solve them. All participants will be sent a link after this event that will feature the titles that are featured today, and a recording will be posted on the library's YouTube page. So should you miss a title or two, don't worry about it. And also, 3 lucky attendees selected at random after the event will win prize packages courtesy of our presenting publisher. Notifications will happen via email later this afternoon. And now, on with our event. I would like to welcome Liz Camfiord, a representative from the publisher Penguin Random House, who will be sharing some of the best and most exciting books, both fiction and nonfiction, coming out this summer. Liz has worked for Penguin Random House for 25 years with booksellers and librarians, and she holds her BA in English Literature from UC Berkeley. She lives with her family in Southern California and also serves as a trustee and publications chair at Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center, where she co-edits the Pacific Coast Poetry Series. Welcome, Liz. What do you have to recommend to us today?
Oh, so much. Thank you, Brendel, and also thank you to Susan Benson for inviting me. Of course, it's always better to do things in person, but there's a way that I can showcase our books in this virtual realm. It really does highlight our books. So I'm going to be talking about summer adult fiction. There are some YA crossover titles, but it's basically adult fiction and nonfiction with some fall highlights. Every season, Penguin Random House publishes, just in their adult publishing program, about 1,200 titles. So you can imagine the challenge of curating just the finest list, both of books that I love and books that I think you will also love. So to get started, we will go and talk about, in fact, we were just talking about Amanda Gorman. So we are Amanda Gorman's first publisher. We have 3 books coming out from her. The Hill We Climb, which was her inaugural poem, which made such a phenomenal impression on a country full of young people and all of the world, really, but certainly young writers will be really moved by Amanda Gorman's poems, and also her picture book that's coming out in September. The Hill We Climb, there on the right side of your screen, is her first poetry collection. But I have worked with her at Beyond Baroque, and she is the real deal, as you can tell, both as a performer and as a writer. So I'm so excited about this. And then every month we are learning about new movie tie-ins, both, Netflix. We have so many different channels these days and streaming opportunities. And here are some of the highlights of books that have been adapted for movies and TV series. So I'm not going to talk about each of these, but I do want to just show you what they are and where they're streaming. And you'll probably recognize books like Jojo Moyes' The Last Letter from Your Lover, which is extremely popular. I'm excited about the Nancy Mitford adaptation on BBC. And then a really special adaptation and book is In the Heights, which is Lin-Manuel Miranda's follow-up to Hamilton, which was, I think, 3-time Tony winner. It was on the stage. So this is a book that is also going to be a film, and of course was already a phenomenal success on the stage. And then I wanted to let you all know that we have virtual events and podcasts and newsletters, and you could spend your entire day, all of your leisure time with Penguin Random House, watching author events and listening to podcasts and getting our newsletters. So this is, again, Brendel will be sending up a follow-up with this presentation, and also links to these areas where you can learn about future author events. I just wanted to call out that it's really exciting that Jasmine Guillory is coming for Authors Uncovered to Sacramento Public Library on June 23rd. And there will be a podcast associated with that. And she is so beloved for her multicultural romances, and that should be an outstanding event. And then Salman Rushdie has a new book of essays, so you can, tap into his New York Public Library event if you care to. And then I'm also excited about Maggie O'Farrell and her event at the Free Library of Philadelphia that's coming tomorrow. And her book, if you don't know about the book Hamnet, it's about Shakespeare and his son Hamnet, who died of the bubonic plague, but this is like a feminist treatment of Shakespeare's wife, and people love this book, and Maggie O'Farrell has legions of fans for her previous books as well. So I can't talk that long about each slide or we'll never get through this. So celebrate Pride Month. These are some really special books that I'm going to take myself off the screen so that I can get a better connection. So these are books, novels, and then the one nonfiction title that are new and celebrate LGBTQ plus Pride Month. So on the left, there is The Engagement, which is written by a renowned journalist and also a professor in political science at UCLA. It's a story that begins in Hawaii in 1990, when a rivalry among local activists triggered a sequence of events that forced the state to justify excluding gay couples from marriage. So this is the history of the quarter-century struggle over same-sex marriage. And then With Teeth is a new novel from the author of Mostly Dead Things, and it's a story of two mothers, one difficult son, and the limitations of marriage, parenthood, and love. And then You Exist Too Much just won last night the Lambda Award for bisexual fiction. It's a provocative and seductive debut novel of desire and doubleness that follows the life of a young Palestinian American woman who's caught between cultural, religious, and sexual identities as she tries to lead an authentic life. And then Dear Centhuran is a memoir, actually, from the National Book Award winning author of Pet, which was a children's book. The author has graced the cover of Time magazine as an author to watch. Here, Emezi, the author, shares both their wounds and their wisdom, offering aspiring writers and artists fresh inspiration for creating new forms of making, loving, and being. And then down below, we have Radiant Fugitives, which is also a debut novel. It follows 3 generations of a Muslim Indian family confronted with a nation on the brink of change. And Filthy Animals our interlinked stories from the beloved Booker Prize finalist author Brandon Taylor. This follows a group of young adults in the Midwest enmeshed in desire and violence. And it's a very satisfying collection that reads like a novel, although they are interlinked stories, as I mentioned. Then Rainbow Milk is an essential coming of age narrative. It's from A New Voice. This follows 19-year-old Jesse McCarthy as he grapples with his racial and sexual identities against the backdrop of his Jehovah's Witness upbringing. And then lastly on this slide, we have Sky Falling, which is about a 12-year-old girl. Our main character is 12-year-old Sky. She has sold, actually in her 20s, excuse me, our main character sold her eggs during one of her brief visits. We meet a 12-year-old girl in Philadelphia who informs our main character that she is her egg. And so this, of course, throws her life into turmoil, and she has to address what it's like to have a really meaningful relationship with another human being, which she has been running from her whole life. Sorry, I'm having trouble. Yes, let's go back. Library Reads is a program with librarians across the country who vote for their top 10 books in any given month. And this month in June, we have Malibu Rising. I'm actually calling you from my home office. I live in Malibu. I just moved here. And this is by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And Taylor Jenkins Reid is a very popular novelist. And she wrote Daisy Jones and the Six. And so she has come to us with a new novel that's about a celebrity family having one last rip-roaring party in their Malibu home with all of the entanglements and controversies. And it takes place in the period of this one day in 1987, I think it is. And the characters are developed so wonderfully. So even though it sounds like fluff, there's a lot of depth to this. By the end of this party, the house will have burned down and lots of secrets will have been revealed. And then the other book that I really want to call out on this slide is The Personal Librarian, which is a fascinating story, historical fiction, which gives us the story of Bella DaCosta Green, who was J.P. Morgan's personal librarian and became one of the most powerful women in New York, despite the dangerous secret that she was keeping, which was that she was the daughter of Richard Greener, who was the first Black graduate of Harvard and a well-known advocate for equality. So Belle DaCosta Green was passing as white in this role that she had in New York City. And it's a really interesting story. And then in May, we had a number of our books selected as Library Reads picks, and notably is Stacey Abrams, the celebrated national leader and best-selling author, who's written a complex thriller set within the halls of the US Supreme Court. It introduces our female character, Avery Keene, who balances an ambitious career and a really difficult family situation. And we will be publishing more books with Stacey Abrams. And then we have book club titles. So we have a new book club brochure, which you can visit digitally by going to Penguin Random House Library Marketing. Again, that's a link that I will send in the follow-up email. This will give you book club questions, book club ideas. It's a really wonderful guide for those of you who are in book clubs or looking to join one and recommend titles for them. And then the title that I just added mere minutes ago to this slide, because I think it's so important, is The Groundbreaking. So this is a history of the Tulsa Race Massacre, which we just honored its 100-year anniversary. I don't know if honored's the right word, really. We just experienced its 100-year anniversary. And this is little taught. So it's very important. It's been adapted into a documentary on the History Channel with LeBron James's production company. And the author is a well-known journalist. And like I said, a really important book. And then we have Gold Diggers, which is a great book club choice. It's what we call an Own Voices debut novel, which means the author is writing from her own experience. It's about it's got elements of magical realism. It's about a teen. We meet our characters in high school, and they can turn their goal. It's about a gold heist and the properties of gold. And maybe you've read it. It's been out for a while, and it's a very special novel. Like I said, if you like magical realism, this would be a good title for you. It moves from Bombay to Atlanta to the California Bay Area. So it takes place in your area. And as one reviewer wrote, this is part coming of age story about the immigrant experience, part heist comedy about soul sapping gold. It's also a timely satire of greed, status anxiety, and the long nightmare of the American dream. And then we have Olympus, Texas, which was a Good Morning America pick recently. That's a family saga that is described as Friday Night Lights meets the Iliad. That's an intriguing description. And then Reese Witherspoon picked Flynn Barry's new novel for her Hello Sunshine book club. And Flynn Barry, if you don't know her, she was born in America, but her family's all Irish, and she writes a lot of her books about Ireland. She spent months living in Belfast with her 6-month-old son in tow, interviewing former and current IRA members. So she's depicting this milieu with in this suspense novel, and she lives down near me in Los Angeles. And then I wanted to just let you know about the First Look Book Club, which is something you can sign up for by going to that link. Again, I'll put it in our follow-up. Suzanne Beecher is a dynamic, wonderful reader, and this is her book club. If you sign up, you will get a chapter a day for 5 days of a new book. Recently, she picked The Summer Job as her book club pick, and that's a book set in the Scottish Highlands in a hotel. It's got food and wine, and the novel's memorable character is reminiscent of the character in Fleabag, the show. Really, kind of edgy, but also very heartwarming. And June is audiobook month. So I wanted to call out 6 of our most popular audiobooks right now. These will probably be familiar to you. Green Lights was a big surprise. How much I loved, and of course, Matthew McConaughey narrates this. So it's part self-help, part history of his Hollywood career, I mean, he kept journals which inform this memoir. So it's not something he wrote on the fly or had ghost written. This is terrible, really authentic, really funny, and very inspirational. And I don't say that lightly because it's really not my usual thing, but it's a special, special book. And the audiobook is, I can't imagine it being the book being any better. His voice is just so perfect for it. And then, of course, Barack Obama's A Promised Land. That's the first of his 2 book memoir. So this is the first volume. And one of our thought leaders, Adam Grant, his book Think Again. He's the author of the originals. And Caste, of course, by Isabel Wilkerson, which examines America as its own sort of caste system, comparing it to other countries with more talked about caste systems, but that we really have that similarity in our own country. And Untamed, Glennon Doyle, is infectious. This is part memoir, again, part inspirational book and audiobook, and she reads it and is fantastic. And then What Could Be Better Than Becoming Michelle Obama's book. So these are still our top sellers and most circulated audiobooks. And I am a poetry lover, so I had to include two of my favorite poetry volumes that are just coming out. We've got Somebody Else Sold the World, which I just love the energy and rhythm of this poet. He reminds me of how I felt when I first discovered Terrence Hayes. These are really accessible poems. They show that there are many possibilities of brightness and hope, even in the middle of pandemics and revolutions. It's his fifth volume. He was a finalist for the National Book Award and the Pulitzer Prize. He's former poet laureate of Indiana. And just if you're not a big poetry reader, I urge you to give Adrian Matejka a try. And he's also really fun to watch on his video presentations. And then Sonia Sanchez is one of America's greatest American poets in history. So this is really a publishing event of her collected poems. It's the largest collection of her life work. She is the founder of the Black Arts Movement. This spans 4 decades of her literary career. It's going to include poems written especially for youth and young adults. For decades, every time she would give a reading, she would make sure to go to the local high schools in every city she visited and do readings for them. And her memoirs are going to be coming out from us with an introduction by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and those will be published by our imprint called One World, which is one of our most noteworthy imprints headed by Chris Jackson. And so I just wanted to mention that because that is going to be another publishing event. And it was called by Maya Angelou, A Lion in Literature's Forest. And here is some forthcoming fiction, but also if you go to that library marketing website, you'll see, in addition to our new book club guide, our summer reading sampler. So you can read a chapter of a number of the books that I'll be talking about in this presentation, and it's really beautifully done. Get a taste of things and see if you want to check the book out or buy them. We've got some great debut novels that are just out or coming out. The Music of Bees is actually written by a beekeeper in Hood River, Oregon. It was one of our library reads picks. It's an uplifting novel. It's an ode to bees, to friendship, and also to grassroots activism. It's set in rural Oregon, and it opens as 44-year-old Alice Holtzman, who's in the grip of a panic attack, nearly collides with a troubled teenager. His name is Jake. She's carrying 120,000 of her honeybees in the back of her pickup truck. But Jake is really interested in her bees. And so she decides to offer him a job on her farm so he can escape his toxic home life. And this is a surprise to her because she's somewhat reclusive, and she also has on her farm a part-time helper, Harry, who's a 24-year-old. He has debilitating social anxiety. So this mix of these 3 people, they forge this unlikely friendship, but then they also have to rally because they need to fight a nefarious pesticide company who moves to town, which threatens the local honeybee population, which is very topical because I'm sure we're all aware of the threats to the honeybee population and how important they are to our livelihoods, really. So this reveals corruption. Yes, it's very gentle fiction in one way, but really important topics. And certainly these relationships are super special. Then we've got The First Day of Spring. This is a mother-daughter story, a page turner, a thriller, really. It has a very disturbing premise. And a question, which is what propels one 8-year-old girl to murder a boy and keep this secret, and later on adopt a pseudonym, and it's not until she has her own child that the past comes back to haunt her. And I don't want to give anything else away, but it's one of our it's doing very, very well. And then it's also set in northern England. It's gotten starred reviews and great for book club discussions. And Ghost Forest, I love that cover. This is for fans of like the movie The Farewell. It's really a slim and poetic novel. It asks the question, how do you grieve if your family doesn't talk about feelings? Our unnamed protagonist in The Ghost Forest considers this question after her father dies. He had been one of the many Hong Kong astronaut fathers, which describes men who stayed in Hong Kong to work while the rest of their families immigrated to Canada before the 1997 handover, when the British returned sovereignty over Hong Kong to China. This is a novel of joy and sorrow, and it weaves memory and oral tradition. And then Everybody Loves a Beach Read. So we're getting ready for summer, and these are 3 books that I highly recommend for summer reading. We've got The Paper Palace, which I'm reading now. It's set on Cape Cod. It instantly transports its readers to the water's edge, evokes the summer vacations in the woods, in the pond, at the beach, from family activities to special summer friendships. But there is, some dysfunction at the heart of this. So our main character is Elle. She's a 50-year-old happily married mother of 3. She awakens at what is known as the Paper Palace. This is their family summer home on Cape Cod. She's visited there every summer of her life, but this morning is different because last night she and her oldest friend Jonas crept out the back door into the darkness and had sex with each other for the very first time, all while their spouses chatted away inside. Now, over the next 24 hours, she has to decide between the life she made with her genuinely beloved husband and also the life she always imagined having had with Jonas if a tragic event at the time when they knew each other hadn't forever changed their lives. And so it's really provocative. It has me, I don't usually like to read about infidelity, but I'll just say that it's really well done. And the author knows how to write. I mean, she wrote for The Sopranos, 6 Feet Under. She has this whole industry background, and she grew up spending summers on Cape Cod, and she now lives in California. And Nick Hornby, a very unlikely reviewer, but gave a great quote saying, "It's been ages since I was so absorbed in a contemporary novel. I loved it." Then we have Emily Henry. If you read Beach Read, which was the smash of, I think it was last summer, she's returned with People We Meet on Vacation. The characters here are Poppy and Alex. They've nothing in common, yet they're the very best of friends. She lives in New York City and he lives in their small hometown, but they've gone on vacation together for 10 years. It's kind of like Same Time Next Year, the movie, until 2 years ago when they ruined everything. And I think you can guess how they did that. They haven't spoken since, but Alex agrees to go on vacation again so they can lay everything out on the table and go from there. People love Emily Henry's writing and storytelling. Lauren Weisberger, she wrote The Devil Wears Prada. This is a new, delicious literary novel from her. And again, rave reviews for it. Then I already sort of described Malibu Rising, but it was a library reads pick. It was a read with Jenna for the Today Show pick, and a really delicious summer book. And then we have Indie Next. So where library reads picks are from librarians, independent booksellers like to pick their favorite books, and it means a lot to us as publishers when they get behind one of our books. And these are 2 books that that the independent booksellers and readers just love. We've got Great Circle. This is a novel, a historical novel. It spans Prohibition era Montana, the Pacific Northwest, Alaska, New Zealand, wartime London, and modern day Los Angeles. And it tells the unforgettable story of a daredevil female aviator. And then we have Morningside Heights. This is starts in 1976. Our main character is Prue Steiner. She's following a long tradition of young people determined to take New York City by storm. But when she falls in love and marries Spence Robin, her hotshot young Shakespeare professor, her life takes a turn she couldn't have anticipated. Tom Perrotta says about this novel, "What does it really mean in sickness and in health, till death do us part? Morningside Heights knows the answer. In this tender, wise, and unflinching novel, Joshua Henkin traces the bittersweet arc of a lifelong love with all its joy and pain." And Literary Luminaries from Knopf. Knopf is one of our most, it's I think been around for about 105 years now. So here are two authors that it has published for a long time that have new books. And these are publishing events as well. We've got The Living Sea of Waking Dreams, which is the new novel from Booker Prize winning author of The Narrow Road to the Deep North, set in Tasmania, where Richard Flanagan lives. Anna is our central character. She's a hyper competent professional. She and her two siblings are refusing to allow the death of their aged, suffering mother who's ready to die. At the same time, fires are darkening the skies and other horror stories fill the news feed. Anna compulsively is checking her phone all the time. She begins to have her body parts vanish. So this has this sort of sci-fi element. Only some people can see what is missing. The novel uses stunning fractured language. It embodies the pace of modern life and also our stuttering fears, our inabilities to slow down and stop consuming, stop escaping, stop avoiding the beauty of life before our eyes. So it's a philosophical novel. It's somewhat of a horror novel. And you can bet that it's going to be you know, up for some prizes again, as he always is. Then Lorna Mott comes home. So for Diane Johnson, this is another main character with a high-strung nature, but this time Diane Johnson is rendering her. I've long been a fan of hers since Lying Low in the late 70s. She's written many novels. She's a two-time finalist for the National Book Award. In this, like Diane's own life, she shuttles between Paris and San Francisco. Our main character, Lorna, has left her husband in France, in a small town in France, and come to America. She is a successful art lecturer, and she's had a great career. She has lovely offspring, grandchildren, her health. She appears publicly to give her art lectures, and she's really a woman with an uncomplicated sociable nature and intellectual life, but she does make this somewhat impetuous but somewhat planned decision to leave her husband. And so this is about the aftermath of that decision and moving back to America. So Diane Johnson's been called the Edith Wharton of expat life. And this is a portrait, not similar to Richard Flanagan, but somewhat so in the examination of the way we live now and sort of our anxiety-driven culture. And a debut novel that is special to me because it's loosely based on the relationship between James Taylor and Joni Mitchell. I'm a huge fan of both of those singer-songwriters. This moves from New York to Los Angeles to Greece to the Grammys. So if you liked Taylor Jenkins Reid's Daisy Jones and the Six, if you like the documentary Laurel Canyon, if you're interested in music and, a wonderful story set in 1969 about a female folk singer and how the romance that she has with the, again, loosely based on James Taylor, character who helps her produce her first album. It's about what female artists must face, what are we willing to sacrifice for our dreams. Clark and Division is set in 1944. It's by Edgar Award winner Naomi Harara. It's eye-opening. It's a new mystery story of a young woman searching for the truth after her revered older sister's death. It really brings to the forefront one Japanese American family's release from mass incarceration at Manzanar. One of the really strong reviews from this is by George Takei, and just getting a lot of attention for this crime novel, but again, with these really important historical elements. And I don't know if you know Mexican Gothic. It sort of took the reading world by storm, a debut novel, and this is the follow-up. Different, but also set in Mexico City. Velvet Was the Night is set in the 1970s. Its main character is a secretary, Meta, who lives amid student protests and political unrest, but really all she cares about is her secret romance magazine and escape. She's very envious of her glamorous next door neighbor, Lenora, who's an art student, but Lenora is very involved in the protests in Mexico City in this era. She disappears under suspicious circumstances, and Meta finds herself searching and going deeper into Lenora's secret life of student radicals and dissidents. And also looking for Lenora is Elvis. So there's a romance brewing in this novel. He's an eccentric criminal who loathes violence and loves old movies and rock and roll. And he becomes more and more obsessed with our main character, who shares his love of music and is a fellow lonely heart. Summer thrillers. So we've got 4 really standout thrillers that I just want to touch on. For A Slow Fire Burning, if you were a fan of Girl on the Train, this will be very pleasing to you. It's one of our biggest novels that we're publishing this summer. The reviews are just as strong as The Girl on the Train. The premise here is when a young man is found gruesomely murdered in a London houseboat, it triggers questions about 3 women in particular, the three women for different reasons, all simmering with resentment, who are, whether they know it or not, burning to right the wrongs done to them. Lee Child says that Hawkins is proving herself a worthy 21st century heir to Barbara Vine and Patricia Highsmith. Then The Damage is a suspense novel. It's first in a 2-book deal we have. It introduces Julia, who's a smart and passionate lawyer. It's set in a really gritty New England small town. It's about a family torn apart by an alleged assault. And it's based on the author's own experience in a domestic child violence unit as a lawyer. She left that career to start her writing career just as she was starting to burn out by just the trauma of that job. Then The Turnout is Megan Abbott. She's one of those rare authors that comes with a really defined brand. This is her first book with Penguin Random House, and she's making waves in Hollywood. 4 of her books have been or are in development for TV adaptations. She's a staff writer for HBO's The Deuce, and she's won 5 Edgar Awards, which are the premier mystery awards, I'm sure many of you know. So this is set against the intense backdrop of a ballet studio where sisters Dara and Marie Durant are running the studio. They've been dancers since they were young. Their parents died. They took over the studio, but there's a suspicious accident that happens during a performance of The Nutcracker. And all of the drama around this ballet studio, around the competition, the anxiety, the exhilaration, is brewing, and an interloper arrives and threatens the sisters' delicate balance. Starred reviews for this, calling it a clever, chilling psychological suspense. And Woman in the Purple Skirt is a #1 bestseller in Japan. It's won their most prestigious literary prize, and we're considering this the next big thing from Japan. And so the, the opening line is, I think what I'm trying to say is that I've been wanting to become friends with the woman in the purple skirt for a very long time. So there's an obsessive element to this for fans of Parasite or Rear Window would probably love this novel. And just a sneak peek into big fiction fall releases. So we've got The Lincoln Highway, which spans just 10 days. It's a road novel. If you loved A Gentleman in Moscow or Rules of Civility from Immortals, then you've probably been waiting for this novel. So in case I didn't already say it, it's set in the 1950s, and our main character is 18-year-old Emmett Watson, being driven home to Nebraska by the warden of a juvenile farm where he's been. He's served 15 months for involuntary manslaughter. His mother's gone, his father's recently deceased, and his family farm has been foreclosed upon by the bank. His intention is to get to California, but some people who sneak into the car have different ideas to other boys from the work farm. And so they end up going to New York City instead. And he's just a fabulous writer. Then Colson Whitehead has a novel here that he's a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner. The Underground Railroad, Nickel Boys are his previous novels. This is like sort of a departure, a nod to Chester Himes, Elmore Leonard, but it's certainly about race and power and family, set in the 1960s in the Bronx, in Harlem, excuse me. It's really a love letter to Harlem as well. And another really important novel is Lauren Groff. She's writing about Marie de France in this groundbreaking work about religious ecstasy and about nuns. And just if you're a fan of hers, this is, she is now fully arrived as one of our most important writers. 12th century Europe. She did great research with academics, and she just captures this world so beautifully. Ruth Ozeki, I just heard an event with her this morning talking about this book. She, is a Zen Buddhist priest, but also just one of our most lovely writers. And this is philosophical fiction where taking on this Zen idea of form and emptiness. It's somewhat a follow-up to her novel, Tale for the Time Being. It's about a 13-year-old boy, Benny. We follow him through the whole novel. He begins to hear voices coming from objects. He's grief-stricken. His beloved musician father has passed away, and he begins to hear, like I said, objects talking. When Ruth Ozeki was talking about this book, she said that the rule she made for herself in writing it was that if anybody gave her something, it made its way into the book. So she showed us this special like turtle snow globe with turtles in it. That's in the book. So I thought that was a really great writing prompt, but she's it's such an involved, multi-layered story, and she can do it so well. Then we love Elizabeth Strout, Olive Kittredge. This is actually somewhat of a follow-up, but can be also read as a standalone novel, but it is a sequel to My Name is Lucy Barton. And it traces the enduring bond between a divorced couple, watching their children grow up and have families of their own set in New York City. So she can do a family portrait like no other. Then a novel from Karl Ove Knausgaard. We publish his seasonal quartet. He writes very autobiographical fiction and memoir. Of course, this is 666 pages. It's really a departure from those autobiographical works. It's got this strange science fiction like element. It's about space, the realm of the dead, and it's set around 9 characters in August when a previously unseen star appears and strange phenomena begin. Then I know that we are running close to the end of the presentation, but I have some nonfiction to tell you about. Facing the Mountain is the new book by the author of Boys in the Boat, which has been adapted for young adult readers, continues to do so well and be adopted as community reads books. And Facing the Mountain is just as powerful. I watched his launch event with the nonprofit Densho in Seattle. He worked with Densho and the director, Tom Ikeda, who wrote the foreword to this book. Densho archives Japanese American stories, and this is indeed, as you can tell by the subtitle, the true story of Japanese American heroes in World War II. So it follows 4 men who enlist to fight, Japanese American men who enlist to fight in World War II as their families are sent to concentration camps. And it's a really important narrative. He writes it beautifully. And then John Green has his first nonfiction. We know him as a really popular young adult writer, Turtles All the Way Down, The Fault in Our Stars. We've got all of his books on our list. We even publish his brother, Hank Green. John and Hank have podcasts. They are very involved with, sort of online education. This is a spinoff from his podcast called The Anthropocene Reviewed, and that is a podcast about just interesting phenomena. This is the Anthropocene era that we're in right now. And this is deeply personal. It's full of universal reflections that's made the podcast so popular. This age is our current geological age in which human activity has profoundly shaped the planet and its biodiversity. So he's taking on different things from Staphylococcus aureus to the Taco Bell breakfast menu, and he's ranking things on a 5-star scale. I know that sounds strange and confusing, but he is so intelligent and so funny, and you can bet that this will be a really engaging book. And also somewhat popular science, Helgoland by Carlo Rovelli. I think of him in some ways as Richard Feynman did for physics. He's that sort of writer and scientist. This is very philosophical, and it's about when you talk about quantum theory, one of the most difficult contradictions, he says, can be explained by seeing the world as fundamentally made of relationships rather than substances. So it's a bold idea. He writes it really accessibly. And Neil Gaiman is a big fan. I love this memoir. This is a writer who wrote that book Gracious, but this is her memoir of mental illness. She had 700 bad days in a row where her marriage collapsed, she broke 3 limbs in separate and unrelated incidents. Her father was diagnosed with cancer. She fell into this really deep depression that could only be referred to as she was put into an inpatient facility for a rest cure. So this really does include craft tutorials, which are serving as the backdrop of her life as it dissolves and is put back together. The Ride of Her Life. This is the true story of a 63-year-old Maine farmer who in 1954, after losing her farm and also having just received a diagnosis that gave her only 2 years to live, rode her horse named Tarzan, and with her dog, went to follow her dream from Maine to the Pacific Ocean on horseback. So this was a decade in which car ownership nearly tripled, when television's influence was expanding fast. So this is a sort of a cultural conflict, but she finds this amazing neighborliness as she makes this journey, and she even meets Groucho Marx. So Elizabeth Letts lives here in Southern California, and she's written some terrific nonfiction. You may know her book a historical novel about the Wizard of Oz. She's terrific. I love this book. I'm reading it now. Our whole company got behind this memoir and picked it as what we call our tidal wave pick. Danielle Henderson she became famous with her Twitter meme called Feminist Ryan Gosling. But anyway, this is a novel about her mother abandoning her when she was young and being raised by her grandmother. It's a love letter to her grandmother, and her grandmother's like no other character I've ever read about. She loved horror movies. She said what you would think might be the wrong thing to Danielle and her brother as they were growing up, but turned out to be just the support and the love and the right message. And now her grandmother, in an event I just watched, has dementia, and she has bought a big farm in upstate New York, and she is having her grandma move in with her so she can return the favor of care. It's really sweet, and the book has been optioned to be a TV series. So that is something to watch for. All That She Carried. I think we're doing this in conjunction with the Smithsonian. This is a book about Ashley's sack. So in 1850s South Carolina, an enslaved woman named Rose faced a crisis, the imminent sale of her daughter, Ashley. Thinking quickly, she packed this cotton bag with a few precious items as a token of love and to try to ensure Ashley's survival. Soon after, the 9-year-old girl was separated from her mother and sold. This is the story of a single object, this sack handed down through 3 generations of Black women to craft this extraordinary testament to people who are often left out of the archives. And it's getting, great reviews. And uh, Michael Eric Dyson says she excavates the history of Black women who face insurmountable odds and invents a language that can travel across time. I have a few more slides here. Here are some important California authors who I'm sure you recognize. Alice Waters, this is her manifesto about slow food as opposed to fast food. She's written several books with us. But she argues in this book that by eating a slow food way, each of us can nurture values such as biodiversity, seasonality, stewardship, and pleasure in her work. So we'll learn, of course, about her founding of Chez Panisse since 1971 and amid political turmoil. And she's really a fabulous writer too. This is Your Mind on Plants. This is a follow-up to Michael Pollan's huge #1 bestseller, How to Change Your Mind. He calls this participatory journalism because he is making the case for decriminalizing psychoactive drugs. And there's a whole movement that started with his book, How to Change Your Mind, about the healing properties of psychoactive plants. I shouldn't say drugs, psychoactive plants. Mental health highlights, the comfort book. Matt Haig is one of our favorite writers. He just came out with The Midnight Library, but this is his book about written for anyone in search of calm and goodness, about the burnout we feel from social media. And how he says happiness occurs when you forget who you're expected to be. And then Dopamine Nation is related to that, I think. This is a book from a Stanford addiction specialist who's at Stanford. She's the medical director at the Stanford Addiction Medicine department there. And dopamine is the neurotransmitter. It floods our brain as we anticipate the cheap delights of everything from potato chips to angry tweets. She diagnoses the problem here and provides a clear way back to a more balanced life. It's interwoven with moving patient stories of struggles and enlightenment achieved. I read the foreword to this, and I think it is so profound. It's just reading the foreword is, will just recenter you, I think. And there's a book for that. I just include that here because it's a blog that I do. It's based on themes. So if you follow, there's a book for that. It's on Tumblr. You can see all manner of books collected under themes. And this is one I did for Mental Health Awareness Month, which was last month. And just 2 more slides real quick. Major memoirs for summer and fall. We've got Anita Hill talking about our 30-year journey to end gender violence. She is, of course, the one who gave the landmark testimony against Clarence Thomas as a sexual menace. This is a new manifesto about the origins and course of gender violence in our society. It combines personal accounts, memoir, law, legal, and social analysis. So the original participants in that hearing were Judge Thomas, Senator Chuck Grassley, and President Biden, and they are all still in positions in government. She teaches at Brandeis University now. Then All In, Billie Jean King, who has a library named after her here in Long Beach, where she's from. This is her inspiring memoir of being one of the first, she's a groundbreaking athlete. She's an incredible activist, and she's was named the first female athlete to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So there's so much to learn about her. She's just a wonderful person. Ai Weiwei, you may know, being up in Northern California, about the exhibit that he did at Alcatraz, which I didn't get to see, but I heard was very powerful. He's one of our most important artists and activists, and this is telling the century-long epic tale of China through the story of his own extraordinary life and the legacy of his father, Ai King, who is the nation's most celebrated poet. And then we've got Those We Throw Away Are Diamonds. This is an intimate lens on a global crisis of the author's story is beyond harrowing. He was born in the midst of the genocide of the Tutsis. And so he is writing about refugees. And since 1996, he has lived in refugee camps. Rarely do refugees write their own story, but this is that case. And then the two last books I want to tell you about coming in the fall, Travels with George from one of our best history writers, Nathaniel Philbrick. Although this also is somewhat of a departure for Nathaniel Philbrick because he does intersperse, it's first person, which he doesn't do usually. It's weaving history and personal reflection in a single narrative. It asks the question, does George Washington still matter? And retraces the forging of America. And very important, the 1619 Project, which is the adaptation into book form of the New York Times Magazine's award-winning 1619 Project, which reframed our understanding of American history by placing slavery and its continued legacy at the center of our national narrative. So this is going to include 18 essays, poems, works of fiction. It's a really intense project, and you'll see lots of publicity and events surrounding it. So thank you so much. Again, follow us on Penguin Random House Library Marketing, or go to Borrow, Read, Repeat. We'll send the links for all of that afterwards, and you can receive our newsletter, which has, like, we do contests and quizzes. It's fun.
Thank you, Liz. That was a great lineup of books.
I got it in under an hour. It's like a miracle. I hope I didn't like make your head spin talking too fast.
No, that was great. I'm most looking forward to the Amor Tolls book and the Silvia Moreno Garcia. I can't wait for both of those coming this fall. That's going to be great. Well, thank you to all of you who came today. It was really wonderful to have you. And this is only the first of 5 of these that we are doing this month. So I hope that we'll see you again. Many of these books are on the library catalog now, and most of the others will be on there soon, except for a few of those fall titles. It's going to be a month or two before you can see those, but you can pre-order them at your local independent bookstore. And again, if you missed any of the titles today, and there were a lot, don't worry, because in the next few days, I will send out a link to all attendees that has a list of the titles presented, plus some of the links that Liz did mention in her presentation. And remember that 3 lucky attendees will win prize packages from Penguin Random House today, and I will notify the winners following this event via email. So I hope that you will join us again next week on Wednesday, June 9th, also at 12 noon for a presentation from HarperCollins. For information about that event and other summer events, or to sign up for summer reading, because you know you want to, please be sure to visit our website at saclibrary.org. Until then, happy reading, everyone.
Happy reading. Thanks so much.